The soldiers started running. Thousands were abandoning their positions. Smoke covered the battlefield. Horses were falling. Cannons roared without pause. And in the middle of the chaos, one man stood completely still: Napoleon. Because at that very moment, he realized something he had refused to believe. He was losing everything. Only a few hours earlier, the situation had looked very different. Napoleon believed he could still win. One more victory, one more battle, and his empire might survive. But time was slipping away, and he had no idea. Another army was already marching towards the battlefield. At first, everything unfolded according to his plan. Cannons opened fire across the fields of Waterloo. Thousands of soldiers advanced in disciplined formations. Cavalry charged. Muskets thundered. The ground shook beneath thousands of marching feet. The battle had begun exactly as Napoleon had hoped. Then, little by little, everything started falling apart. Every attack cost more men. Every victory took longer than expected. The British line refused to break. Precious hours slipped away. Then, someone appeared on the horizon. At first, it looked like a distant cloud of dust. Then came more banners, more soldiers, more cavalry, more artillery. Napoleon looked towards the horizon, and for the first time that day, real concern crossed his face, because he knew exactly who they were. The Prussian army had arrived. If those reinforcements reached to the battlefield, everything could be over. Suddenly, Waterloo was no longer just another battle. It became a race against time. Napoleon had to defeat the British before the Prussians joined the fight. Every minute mattered. Every delay brought disaster closer, because if he failed, his empire would disappear forever. Across the battlefield, thousands of soldiers continued fighting without knowing the full picture. They had no idea that history itself was hanging in the balance. But within a few hours, one empire would collapse. One emperor would lose everything he had spent a lifetime building. And the Battle of Waterloo would change the course of European history forever. The next morning, Napoleon didn't wait. He knew another army was marching toward Waterloo. Every hour they delayed, his chances of victory became smaller, so he made a bold decision: attack immediately, break the British line, win the battle before the Prussians could arrive. Everything depended on speed. Everything depended on today. Then the cannons opened fire. The thunder of artillery rolled across the battlefield. Smoke quickly covered the fields. The French army began advancing, slowly at first, then with growing determination. Thousands of soldiers marched forward in disciplined ranks, bayonets gleaming through the smoke, straight toward the British positions. Then the British answered. Their muskets erupted in a devastating volley. Hundreds of French soldiers fell within moments. Gaps opened in the advancing ranks, but the French kept moving. Again and again, every step forward cost more lives. Still, Napoleon refused to stop the attack, because he understood something his soldiers could not yet see. Time was running out. Then, Napoleon made another gamble. He ordered his cavalry forward. Thousands of horsemen surged across the battlefield. The ground shook beneath the pounding hooves. Dust filled the air. Sabers flashed in the sunlight. For a moment, many believed this charge might decide the battle, but the British refused to break. They formed disciplined infantry squares, shoulder to shoulder, bayonets pointing in every direction. Again and again, the French cavalry charged. Again and again, they were driven back. Horse after horse fell. Rider after rider disappeared beneath musket fire. The attacks had failed. Napoleon watched the battlefield with growing frustration. Every failed assault cost precious time, and every passing minute brought another army closer. Then, Lookout spotted movement on the horizon. At first, it appeared to be a distant line of dust. Then came more banners, more soldiers, more artillery. The Prussians were arriving. Napoleon's expression changed immediately. He understood the danger, because now he was running out of time. The battle was no longer just a fight against the British. It had become a desperate race against two armies. If the Prussians reached the battlefield in full strength, everything Napoleon had built could disappear forever, and that was exactly what was about to happen. The Prussians had arrived. Thousands of fresh soldiers were pouring onto the battlefield. Napoleon looked across the horizon and immediately understood the danger. He was no longer fighting one army, he was fighting two. And time had finally run out. Yet even now, he refused to surrender. Then, Napoleon made one final gamble. He ordered his finest troops forward, the Imperial Guard, veterans who had fought beside him for years, soldiers who had earned a legendary reputation across Europe, men who almost never failed. If anyone could still save the battle, it was them. If they broke the British line, victory might still be possible, but if they failed, everything would be lost. The Imperial Guard marched forward through smoke and cannon fire, calm, disciplined, determined. Across the battlefield, thousands watched in silence. Friend and enemy alike knew this was the decisive moment. At first, it looked as though the Guard might succeed. The British line appeared to waver. Smoke covered the battlefield so completely that few soldiers could see what was happening ahead. Then suddenly, the British rose from behind the ridge. Without warning, they unleashed a devastating volley of musket fire. The battlefield erupted in smoke and thunder. Everything changed within seconds. Then, the impossible happened. The Imperial Guard began to retreat. At first, only a few men stepped back. Then more followed. Soon the retreat became impossible to hide. Nobody could believe what they were seeing, because if the Imperial Guard was falling back, the battle was already lost. Panic spread through the French army with incredible speed. Confidence disappeared. Officers struggled to restore order, but it was too late. The line was breaking everywhere. Then everything collapsed. Cannons were abandoned where they stood. Horses raced across the battlefield without riders. Soldiers threw away their weapons as they fled. Units that had fought together for years dissolved into complete chaos. Before Napoleon's eyes, the empire he had spent a lifetime building was slipping away. By sunset, it was over. Napoleon had lost the Battle of Waterloo. His empire had fallen, and Europe would never be the same again. One battle had ended the rule of one of history's greatest military commanders. In the months that followed, Napoleon would surrender, be sent into exile, and never return to power again. For generations, people would remember this battlefield, because one battle ended an empire. One emperor lost everything he had fought to build, and Waterloo became the battle that ended Napoleon forever.